Welcome one, welcome all. This is our eighth and final webinar in our 8 week long series designed to prepare you for life as an international student in the US. As always, I am your host, Ansh Mundra, calling in from my bedroom in New York City. These past 8 weeks have been so crazy. I hope you've had fun following us and like just listening to our conversations. I know I've had a lot of fun in these past 8 weeks. Can't believe we're already at the end of it. But today we have two amazing speakers, and of course, Krish. And these two speakers are very special to me, but I'll let them introduce themselves. Mahika, how about you kick us off?
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Mahika. I recently graduated from NYU this summer. I got I did my major in biology and my minor in psychology. And now I'm working as a full-time research assistant at Weill Cornell Medicine. And so I help with stroke patients and sports medicine research and all of that fun stuff. And yeah, I live in New York City.
How are you, Taran?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Uh, and as for my major, pretty much the same story. I recently graduated from NYU about 3 months ago. I did a bachelor's in economics and I did a minor in business studies. Currently, I am running my own AI development and automation company where I essentially help business owners and universities integrate AI into their current systems and help them, automate repetitive tasks, reduce manual effort.
Sweet.
Ansh, do
Krish,
you
do you want
want
to
to?
introduce yourself?
Sure, I'll go and then you can.
Okay.
So I'm still a senior at NYU. I'm studying business tech and entrepreneurship. And yes, it's been a crazy 8 weeks, and it feels kind of surreal to have been doing this every single week and having some of you attend diligently. So I see some of you here from week one. Azhar, nice to see you
Shout
again.
out Azhar.
Yeah, it's been a good few weeks. So happy to kick this off. Ansh, to you.
Yeah, my name is Ansh. I also graduated from NYU with a degree in economics and data science. I call Dubai home, and currently I am working as a chief growth officer at Rome, and I'm also a content creator on Instagram. And I'm also working on another startup with Mahika and Taran, which we'll talk about very soon. But the theme of today's webinar is building community and involvement. And the reason for that is because everybody wants to feel like home. Everybody wants to find people who feel like home. And that's very important, especially when you're studying abroad in the United States. All NYU folks out there, yes, Achyut, it is all NYU today. But that's what I want to talk about today and question our speakers about how they went about building community. So my first question for you guys is what strategies, if you had any, did you have to build a sense of community when you first arrived on campus?
I can start us off. My freshman year was completely online. I'm from India. And so I was taking my classes synchronously, but from like 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. And so that wasn't very great for like community building. However, I did make friends within my classes, within the groups that I had. So my main strategy there was to just say hello and ask questions and follow up the next week on if they told us something. Um, but yeah, when I actually got to campus, how I prepared myself to be able to find community, sort of build myself up a platform just to be able to actually come and talk to people is make plans with the people that I already was in touch with. And then also join every single club that I was interested in. The thing about university clubs is that it's not like signed off or anything. Like you don't have to be a part of that for the next 4 years. And so you can get into the club, and if you don't really like it, you can leave the club. But like the point is you're going to find people that have similar interests to you. And that's what you need when you build community. You want to find some similarities and then understand what's different about them, and then sort of have deeper conversations that help you build that community. So that's one aspect of it. And then I also applied for an on-campus job while I was still a first year student. And when I got it, then that was also my community for the next year.
Yeah, makes sense. How about you, Taran?
Yeah, just to add on what Micah said, I think as far as getting involved in clubs, a lot of students, ignore their school emails to a great extent. And, there's a lot of important information that comes through. And I think it's important to at least just read it. You don't have to act upon any of it, but I think I missed out on a lot of events and clubs and different things happening around campus because I used to ignore a lot of my emails. So that would be my first advice, just check your email. Secondly, if possible, definitely try to live on campus in your first year. I just think that, it allows for uh, getting started with your community as fast as possible. Like, universities are huge. There are big communities, but there are also micro communities, and you're always going to find the people that you gel the most with. And also, build relationships with professors and advisors. Like, or any university that you go to, these professors are, while they're teaching, they are also in the real world, applying all the skills that they teach in the real life. So have conversations with them, and form connections, because you never know what kind of opportunity or connection might come through that, because they might know a student who is in the same path as you, and they might connect you. You might get great mentorship. So I think, yeah, these are the ways I think I would build community if I was a freshman again.
That makes a lot of sense. Mahika, you mentioned on-campus jobs and how that helped you also find community. And I also want to touch on that a little bit. I think what advice I would give students is that try to do different on-campus jobs. So, for example, when I was at NYU, my first ever job was as an intramurals scorekeeper and official. So I was like officiating basketball games and scorekeeping basketball games and volleyball games and box cricket games, and that was just like completely not related to what I was studying at all. Or but what happened was it gave me a lot of leadership skills and also exposed me to a lot of non-Indians, because I feel like before that job my entire community was like filled with Indians, which was nice. But I also realized that the reason I'm studying abroad is because I want to interact with people from all over the world. So getting that job and having that sort of experience really opened my mind up to things and gave me skills in areas that I didn't think I would get. For example, like conflict management and people management. So on-campus jobs are an amazing way for you to meet people and find people who you can really connect with, because at the end of the day, you're going through the same things, you're doing the same amount of work, you're getting paid the same amount as well. So I think on-campus jobs are super important.
I think just to add to that, I know we're sorry, Taran, just 1 second.
No, go ahead.
I know we're
Yeah.
honing in on the job aspect of it too. I feel like I was also a part of the student council, and I was part of the student council for 3 years. And so having that continuity for myself as well with almost the same people really helped me build stronger friendships and relationships with the people that I was on the student council board with. And we had weekly meetings on Tuesdays, and this was not a paid thing. This was everyone was coming in just out of the goodness of their own heart to be able to advocate for other NYU students. And so go to a meeting or two, or go to some sort of event that they're hosting so that you can get to know people there and just sort of have conversations. That's the most important thing. And the thing is, like, a lot of organizations will just post on Instagram. So what I did was I just followed a bunch of organizations and a bunch of clubs and all of that on Instagram. So I know. And sometimes they just have free food. So just go for the free food. Done.
Now, just to add on to what both of you said, first of all, like when you take up an on-campus job, it does not necessarily, you don't have to think that it has to be related to your job field of study or anything, uh, just do anything. Like Ansh was doing intramural coaching, it's nothing related to economics or data science, but he diversified his skill set, Uh, Similarly, Mahika was in student council, she learned how to manage people and, be able to organize things the right way so that everyone benefits. Similarly, I was an admissions ambassador. Like, public speaking was daunting for me to say the least. And I, by constantly forcing myself to give tours on a daily basis, kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone. And that was because I decided to do a job that was nothing related to my field of study. So I think it's important to do that in order to, discover what you're best at and also diversify your skill set. And also, when you go to these meetings, like Mahika said, you need to have conversations, and it also allows you to meet people who are not of your nationality and ethnicity. You coming from abroad and coming to a foreign land, if you only make friends of your nationality and ethnicity, then it's kind of a waste. What I mean to say is make friends of your nationality and ethnicity as well, but also branch out so that you get the perspective that you are intending to hone in your college experience?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, However, at the same time, I think for me, I know I mentioned that, yeah, I was friends with a lot of Indians and I wanted to move out of that. But I think connecting with people who are from home, who are from wherever you belong to, is also important because there is a shared sense of belonging there. So I just want to talk about, I want to ask you guys, how important was it for you to connect with people who were like you, who were in the same boat? Like, did that provide you relief? Did you feel like you being limited by their presence? Like, how did that feel to you?
We can go through the same order. Mahika, you can
Yeah,
start.
so I think it was a mix of both, and you just have to learn how to strike a balance between it being limiting and it being comfortable. And so when I first started out, having that kind of community definitely helped me be reminded of home a little bit, to be able to go and celebrate certain festivals together that were organized by the university, because you have a lot of clubs that also help organize events around surrounding festivals of different religions and all of that, right? And so being away from home for the first time and not celebrating those festivals with your family, I feel like is a big thing for a lot of people. While it wasn't of as much importance to me, I still felt really nice knowing that I could go and enjoy these things that other people also relate to, like playing Holi or celebrating Diwali and like eating pav bhaji when you go to that event, that's a bonding experience. But I also feel like I knew when to disconnect from that and move on to a different group, or move on to different people to hang out with. So I feel like it really, really depends on the dependency that you have on a certain group. My main advice is you're your own best friend and guide when you're abroad. I think that's one thing that I really appreciate that I did when I first came to New York. I would just up and go alone, and that was totally fine. And exploring the city on your own safely, go out during the day. I mean, that goes without saying. Make sure you're taking all the safety measures, you share your location with your friends and stuff. But having that experience as well, getting to know myself better, helped me also figure out the kind of people that I want to hang out with. And at the end of the day, it's the people that matter, not their ethnicities. It's the values that you guys share, because that could be similar even across ethnicities. And so just keep your mind open and be able to go into a conversation knowing that you can change your own views and someone else could change their own views too.
Yeah, no, I think, being intentional to change is so important, and deciding that before going into a conversation. And also, I think Mahika covered pretty much everything. So not much to add over that. But I would say, it's important to designate time for both groups. For instance, for me, striking a balance was important because I would want to live with people of my nationality and people I'm comfortable with, so that when I come back home, I have that feeling, right? But when I'm outside in the world, I'll try to designate my time equally. For instance, I might attend a cultural club meeting one day and join an international or mixed group activity another day. So helps you ensure giving attention to both sides and kind of mix cultural and international activities. And that, for example, if you go to Holi, right, there's such a amazing event that happens in all universities. And you can invite your international friends that you've met somewhere else to these kinds of events, explore different cultures, and then that person will do the same for you eventually. So I think, since you've been given a platform where there are so many nationalities, make the best use of it. And like, it's also important to avoid exclusivity in a sense. What I mean is, while it's natural to see comfort and familiar cultural practices, it's also important not to become overly reliant on one group. Exclusively spending time with those from your own background might limit your experience, and also ignoring them altogether can make you feel isolated. So yeah.
That's very fair. Uh, I want to ask you guys, like, what advice do you have for students who are shy or hesitant to get involved? Because I want to talk about my experience. I feel like when I came to NYU, I was suddenly met with a lot of people who I told myself are cooler than me in some sense, who are like so much more outgoing, so much more extroverted, so like they have their stuff figured out. And I was like, man, I don't know how to like put myself out there in that way. So what advice do you guys have for people who are shy and who maybe don't want to talk to as many people?
I would say that I would classify myself as somewhat of a shy person. I'm very ambiverted, I would say. I know how to hold a conversation, but it's it is sometimes hard for me to go up and say hello to someone new, right? I would always wait for the other person to come up and say hello to me and then continue a conversation that I know I could hold. So I feel like one thing is to play to your own strengths. But when you come in for the first time, also knowing that sometimes you just have to let go of that shyness for just a split second to be able to actually expand your comfort zone a little bit. You don't have to go and talk to 80 people. You can go and talk to one person. You can say hello to one person on that elevator you're on. You can not be on your phone and observe things and compliment someone on their outfit that you see constantly, There's so many different ways to make human contact, and I feel like that goes a long way. I feel like also for me, what helped was being a good listener. When having those conversations, of course, you're talking and all of that, but a huge part and more important part, I might add, is listening. And to be able to repeat what the other person has said is important to them, back to them, asserting or even reassuring them that you're in that conversation. You are able to hold that conversation and you're able to tell them back what they said and give your own views, ask them what they feel about that. That's what makes actual relationships. I understand that it's very overwhelming going and asking someone, hi, like my name is Mahika, I'm majoring in biology, what's your major? I feel like we do that a lot, but you don't need to do just that. Play to your own strengths and be yourself and be authentic in how you approach people, and you will find people that are on the same wavelength as you, and that's really important. Saying that, I also feel like you need to not be too attached to the fact that some people may just not want to have a conversation, and that's not on you. That's their choice. And so I feel like as a shy person, as a kind of introverted person, I'm like, did I say something wrong? Like, why is it that they're not like conversing with me? That's their choice. You made your choice to go say hi. They chose not to reciprocate. That's fine. Move on. And so I feel like that's a huge thing to think about. It's not on you. Just be nice and be a kind person and listen well, and you're going to be able to have good relationships and good conversations.
Yeah. So
I
many
think
great
I'm
points over
gonna
there. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Krish.
after you, Taran. After you.
No, no, go ahead. Okay, fine. I was just saying, just to mimic what Mahika said, start small, because like just by having conversations with individuals rather than groups. I think one-on-one interactions are so much less intimidating and can help you build confidence, and eventually you can expand to speaking with smaller groups, right? And uh, coming to what Ansh said, remember that everyone has insecurities. Even those who seem cooler likely have their own insecurities and worries. They might be more focused on themselves than on judging you. And understanding this can make them seem more approachable. And also, I think like it's we should normalize accepting that awkward moments can happen. Not every conversation will be perfect, and that's okay. Awkward moments are normal and happen to everyone. And the important thing is to not to dwell on them and just keep trying. Focusing on listening is very important. And I think another thing is seeking feedback. If you're comfortable, just find your inner group circle or your trusted friend circle whom you can uh, bounce ideas off and seek feedback. For example, that is Mahika and Ansh for me, right? In a lot of ways, I would go to them and practice a certain kind of a conversation before I'm actually about to simulate it in a real life. So, stuff like that really, really help preparing conversation starters, actually knowing exactly what you're going to speak. But you don't have to always do that. Those are some instances, but when it's just a casual setting, just be yourself. And, eventually you will just become more and more confident in just being yourself.
We have a question in the chat. Shasidaran, hi, welcome. Thank you for joining. We're not exactly talking about imposter syndrome. We're basically talking about what are some things that people who are shy or a little bit closed off, what are some things that they can do to form connections in university and build community. So that's kind of what Taran was going over. My next question for you guys
I think
is,
Krish had something to add
Yeah,
before
I'm
we
just
move on.
gonna
sorry,
pitch
go
in
for it.
over here. No, no, you're good. I'm saying people love to talk about themselves, especially white people. Start with a compliment, and in 5 minutes, you could very well have someone think you're their new best friend.
Yeah.
Always start, elicit. If you don't know what to say, it's perfect because they love talking. So just prompt them. It's literally sometimes I say it's kind of like speaking in a chat. They just go on and on and on. You just need to know what to say. So you say, hey, that t-shirt's really nice. Where do you get it from? Or like, where are you from? You know, what's some good food around here? I just moved to the city. And oftentimes people be like, oh, I'm so down to help because first you're looking up to them and you're like, oh, I think you know something I don't. And all these small tells make them feel important. When you make someone feel important, valued, and special around you, they will love you. So when it comes to making friends and you don't know what to say, just start by saying something nice to them or asking them a question that you genuinely have. Don't come up with some bullshit like why is it so hot today? Like really come up with a question that, where can I get good food? Or
Yeah.
just something. It could be anything.
I completely agree, Krish, because I think we spend a lot of time trying to be interesting, and instead we should spend more time trying to be interested in the other person instead of constantly trying to impress people and put our best foot forward, realizing that that's never going to happen because we are human and we are flawed and we are imperfect. And owning your imperfections, I think, puts forward a sense of confidence because you're like, I know I have these imperfections, but I'm still choosing to talk to you. I'm still choosing to put my foot forward and put myself out there. So, all that to say, be interested in the other person, try to get to know them. And once you, in like 5 minutes, you make them feel like, oh my God, this person is making me feel like the most important person in the world. They'll obviously want to get to know you as well because they're like, shit, I have to repay this favor now because they wanted to get to know me, so I also want to get to know you. And that's been a very effective way for me to like attract people in general. And that leads me to my next question. How important is it to not chase but start attracting people towards you, especially when you're at university? Because I felt like at certain points I was constantly chasing behind these people who I wanted to hang out with, but didn't want to hang out with me. But after a while, I'm just like, I don't care about that anymore. I'm going to start attracting. And the way I started personally doing that is just by being myself. Like, for example, the way Mahika and I became friends was because I started talking about active listening in this in this training we had for this on-campus job. And she was like, oh my God, I also like talking about active listening. And then we just started chatting. So what are some things that you have done or advice that you have for people on how to attract people towards you?
I feel like that's such a crazy example, honestly. Like we've been friends for like almost 2 years now, and the fact that that's how we started talking is so particular of us is because I wrote onto my application for that job exactly what he was talking about in that meeting. And I went to him and I was like, dude, I've never heard another person say it like this. And so it's so important to hold your own ground when you're trying to attract. The thing is, these things happen when you least expect it. You have to know for yourself that what your worth is. And I feel like that comes with a lot of spending time with yourself and a lot of confidence. And so, something that's really, really important there is that once you have that confidence, to still be able to be a nice person and accept what you have. And sometimes it helps to speak when you're spoken to, almost. Like, I feel like that amplifies your aura a little bit. And then, honestly, the people that need to be around you will come to you. And that I truly believe in that is because I don't really talk to the people that I spoke to in freshman year, and I'm totally okay with that because in that season of life, that's what I needed. However, now the season of life that I'm in, I have my friends that are doing other things that are constantly influencing me in the best way possible to be the best version of myself at this stage in my life. And so it's so important because you do a lot of growing up with a lot of different people. And that happens at accelerated rates when you come into university. And you have to be open to letting yourself grow alone with other people without being dependent on them for you to grow. And so that's how that's why you need to stop chasing, is because you can be the only sort of stimulus for you to change, not the other person that you are chasing.
For sure.
No, some great points. I think, when you focus on improving yourself, whether through personal development or like, picking up a skill or pursuing a certain passion of yours, you naturally become more attractive to opportunities and people. Instead of expending energy chasing external validation, you invest in becoming the best version of yourself, which in turn draws, the right opportunities and people to you. And I think like, chasing often leads to is my personal opinion, but chasing often leads to a sense of desperation or neediness, which can kind of push people away. And on the flip side, when you focus on being true to yourself and living by your values, you naturally attract people who resonate with who you are. And so then it's just authentic and meaningful relationships. And I
Yeah.
feel like the mindset of attraction is so rooted in like abundance rather than scarcity. So like when you chase, you might do so out of fear of missing out, or the belief that opportunities are limited. But attracting is based on the belief that there are a lot of opportunities and connections available, and the right ones will come to you in time. So I think just kind of shifting your mindset can lead to a much more positive and like abundant outlook on
100%, 100%. I think that's something I've learned as well. When I first came to university, I was extremely frugal to a flaw, I would say, where
it.
wouldn't spend any amount of money. Well, I would spend money, but then I would constantly be checking where I'm spending money, where it's going, this and that. And I realized that I don't need to live with that scarcity frugal mindset, and that there are abundant opportunities and that I can have all of it. And that
Yeah,
shift, I think, is extremely important. I want
yeah.
to touch upon something that Mahika said, which is spending time alone. This is something that I was never told when I first started university, is that you will spend a lot of time alone, especially if you're in a big city. And that's ironic, I know, because in a big city there are a lot more people, but it can also feel very isolating and lonely. And I think spending time alone was the best thing that could have happened to me because of a few things. One is that I started to get to know myself. Oftentimes what happens is that we spend our entire lives, first 2 decades, 25 years of our lives, not knowing what our own opinions are, simply because we are told everything, right? When I moved to the United States, I was 18 years old, and everything that I knew and everything that I thought was because of either my friends or my family, and some original thought as well. But once I started to spend time alone with myself, I'm just like, I started questioning so many things. And once you start to question, you start to develop opinions, which then brings me to what Taran said, which is that you just become a more attractive person simply because you have more opinions to share, right? And when you have more opinions to share, it's also easier to attract because you just have a better personality. And that happens when you spend time alone, when you literally are in the trenches and you're going through it. You're just like, oh my God, there's nobody for me. But man, I'm telling you, coming out of it, when there are people for you, when you do find the people that love you and care for you, it's all worth it. So don't be afraid of spending that time alone.
Yeah.
And I want to say that in that time alone, it's very nice and important to get in touch with who you left behind. So what I mean by that is like talking to your parents and talking to your younger siblings or whoever that might be for you, who you care from back home, spending like time with them on your phone intentionally, once every 2 days or once every day, I think is personally very important, simply because you're leaving them behind and also they're leaving you behind in a way. So there's a separation there. So it's important to give time to your family as well. So don't forget that simply because you moved abroad.
Yeah. I think especially the first 3 months when you move abroad are the most brutal, in my opinion. And this is also from experiences that my friends have shared with me that have moved abroad. It is honestly very gut-wrenching when you come in and you're just alone. And especially at times where some people may not even have roommates. And honestly, this is something that my dad told me because he's lived alone sometimes. And he's like, the walls start talking to you. How do you face that? You know, how do you sit with yourself in that silence and actually think about who you want to be? Because you're coming into a new continent almost most times. No one knows you. Who is it that you choose to be? That's the question that you're asking yourself. And it is by definition an existential crisis, you know? And so give yourself the grace to understand that that's a huge thing. And that I didn't let myself do that. I was like, what's wrong with me? Why am I like being like this? Who am I? And then I was like, oh, actually, I do need to figure this out. Great timing, you know? And so while there's so many different things that are happening around you, so many different things are happening to you, you're on a whole different continent, you're around strangers, new culture shocks, all of that stuff, and you're wondering who you are. And so I feel like it's such an important place to be able to give yourself the grace to actively just think about who you are and be able to be okay with leaving things behind. There might be certain friendships that you had during high school and everything that you are thinking about or rethinking because you're like, oh, maybe I should call them, but I just don't have the time. Having open and honest conversations with the people that you're leaving behind is the way to go. You need that kind of closure, even for yourself. And what Ansh said is so important because this is such an isolating experience. Try not to actively isolate yourself from people that you know you can count on. And that is your family. I know that that was my best friend for me at the time. And so being able to reach out in a time of isolation is very important. Otherwise, you're going to collapse in on yourself, and you do not want to do that because this is a time of growth. It is not a time for you to question everything that you are doing. You just need to be open to what you want to do.
Absolutely. And some of you might feel a little bit afraid hearing that, and that's normal, but I want you to take that fear and light a fire under you and turn that fire and flame into excitement. Because, like Mahika
Channelize.
said, this is a journey of personal growth and professional growth, and there's always help to be found. And that's kind of why we exist, where we want to help people who we know will go through the same things that we did. So Rome exists exactly for that, and we're going to do a lot of in-person events where we try to connect with people from all across the United States. So please stay tuned for that. But I want to quickly answer this question by Ananya in the Q&A. She goes, "Hi everyone, my question is, I feel like I need to do a lot at uni, like projects, internships, organizations, and also maintain a great GPA and have a social life. And so you start expecting a lot from yourself.
Mhm.
Any advice on this?"
Taran, you want to go? You didn't answer the previous question.
Yeah, no, I think it's okay to be overwhelmed and it's okay to think that you need to do so much, but it's also okay to take things easy in the sense that, try to make the best use of your time. But so oftentimes when people are hard on themselves, they uh, do not manage to reach their maximum potential, and that's what then holds them back. So just it's important to prioritize. You might want to do 100 things. You might want to do, like, every single day you're going to have a new idea or something new that you want to do, or if a friend brings you an opportunity or a professor asks you for something. But you also have to learn how to say no. You need to learn how to say no. You need to learn how to prioritize, and that's how you will be able to do all of the things you want and still not have FOMO about the things that you're missing out.
Yeah. I think Taran really covered that. My one main thing is prioritize. And you might feel like you're missing out on one thing over the other, but this is such an important life skill to have even after university, because you're going to be living your own life and you might have people that are dependent on you, and that also adds to your own bandwidth of being able to do things. And so it's so important to be able to let go of some things in certain seasons of life. When you know that you have an exam coming up, you know that that takes priority if that is your priority. But when you know that you have the time, or when you can make the time to have a social life and to be able to reconnect, you don't need to go to every single party. You can reconnect with one or two of your friends from that group just to be able to fill your cup of social interactions, right? And so my point is that it's always quality over quantity. It's not how many things you're doing at a certain time, it's how you're doing those things at a certain point in time. And so a lot of people will look like they have it all together, but there's no way they're doing all 10 things in that one day. And we're all given those 24 hours and we all need to rest, unfortunate as that is. But we can only be so productive. And some days you might have those days where you don't want to do a lot of things. And that's okay too. Take it in your stride and be okay with, telling yourself that, okay, I really do have this deadline, so I need to grind for this. But after that, I'm just going to chill. And so making those decisions for yourself, it is such an important life skill to be independent. And time blocking.
And yeah, adding on to that, sorry, Taran, give me a sec. Adding on to that, um, I'd say every time you look to someone who seems like they have it all in place, remember that they started from scratch.
Yeah.
You build one by one. It's like Lego. You're not just gonna rapidly have this tower, this castle. It starts with one block at a time, one habit at a time. So even the most, outstanding person you're looking to, the president of the best club or whoever it is, doing 10 things, internships, this, that, sports, they started by just probably making their bed in the morning. Like that was the first habit they began with. And you'd be shocked how quickly these things can stack up when you set in place processes that say, okay, when I get homework, I'm going to do it that day. And you make that a routine. Everything starts to fall in place, and try and master your processes. The more you can master stuff, the more habitual it becomes. Then you stop thinking about it actively. There's this quote, this is a bit existential, but there's this quote that says, more evolved you are as a person, the more you can do with less conscious thought. And once you start inculcating these habits and these processes, life just becomes simple. And then when you look to that person at the right on your right, and then you look back at where you were and where you are today, be like, holy shit, it's actually not that hard. It's just that this guy knows what to do, when to do, and that comes back to priorities. You need to know what to prioritize when, but also remember that priorities are different for every person. So what someone else might take precedence in someone else's life won't be the same for you. And last thing I'm going to say is when you do step one, which is create process, and step two, which is learn to prioritize, step three is create a not to do list.
Yeah.
Literally a not to do list, because there's so much to do that knowing, okay, this is something that I'm actually not going to do is a lot more beneficial than putting 50 things on your to do list. And that's something that we do at Rome as well, stuff that we're not going to touch for a while. And it seems to work really well. So in action, it works. Give it a try when you get that.
Absolutely. I think choosing to focus on 3 to 5 things is more than enough at any point of time. So, for example, in your first semester, what are you focusing on? You're focusing on maintaining your GPA. You're focusing on maybe getting into a couple of clubs that you want to get into, building a few friends, making sure that you don't put on the freshman 20, whatever they say, freshman 20 pounds, that doesn't happen to you. And maybe a couple other things, right? And you just focus on that and you just keep going at it. And Ananya, another thing I'll tell you is that just be willing, just be ready and okay to suck at things, because all of these things are going to be probably very new to you, right? And if you're willing to suck at that, you can analyze how you've been doing and then give yourself feedback on how you can improve the next time you're doing it. And that way you will grow exponentially, because a lot of people are not willing to suck at new things. And if you're willing to do that, you can easily put yourself way ahead as compared to most people. But at the same time, I don't want to make that statement, because you are running your own race. And so if you see other people who are like quote unquote ahead of you or like doing more things than you, understand that they have a lot of help probably, and they probably had a better starting point than you did. So if you ever feel like that, tell yourself that, like, hey, listen, man, I'm running my own race. I don't need to compare myself to anybody, and I'll be okay no matter what happens. Because, for example, like 9 months ago, 10 months ago, I was like personally applying to jobs, nothing was working out. And I took basically a Hail Mary, and I was like, I'm just going to start creating content, and things started to work out. So what I want to say is that things will work out provided you just keep trying and you just don't stop. You will find success.
Yeah, just to
Also,
add one last thing. Yeah, no,
after
go
you,
ahead, Krish.
after you.
No, I was just saying, it's so important to seek support. Like so many people feel, it's so overwhelming to handle all of these things on your own, especially in an international environment. And so, don't hesitate to seek help from professors, advisors, or your friends. I found this issue in myself a lot, where I would get something and I would think, oh, I can figure it out myself, but it's okay to seek support. And, something that Krish said, it's so important to have systems and processes in place, because this reminds me of this quote, like, you do not rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your system. And it's so important to always echo that in everything that you do. Like, whether it's large projects, or you need to learn how to break them down to smaller manageable tasks, and then tackle them one at a time. Like, it's so important to have these if you want to intentionally achieve your goal. Yeah, wanted to add that.
Definitely. And adding, that's exactly what I was going to say. Learning from your peers is something that will put you far ahead. It's so understated to say that, oh, only if someone's professionally ahead of me or someone's older than me can I learn from them. That's the most bullshit statement on the planet. I believe lateral networking is perhaps even more important when I say lateral with your peers. Because tomorrow when you'll start running industries and you'll have your own companies and you'll literally changing the world, you should know your friends who are doing that alongside you. Because if you don't and you just know older people, those older people are not cool anymore. They're not popular. Most of them will be dead by the time you get to that stage. So the value diminishes. I'd say it's definitely important to get to a certain degree with people older than you and involve yourself in those circles. But at the same time, it's very, very important to learn from your peers and network with those around you, especially the ones that you see are doing something cool and those that you can learn from. Being humble and maintaining humility, possibly the two biggest things you can do. No matter what you achieve, stay humble, be willing to learn from anyone. Even if you know what they're going to say, listening is powerful. Just be quiet, learn to listen. The more you listen, the more you'll start to reflect on stuff you already know and process it further. And the more you process it, the more that knowledge becomes powerful because the more ways you figure out how to apply it. So sometimes just shut up and listen. It's the best thing you can do, even if you already know.
That's my mantra, bro. Just shut up and listen. And I think what you said about lateral networking is so important because especially when you're 21, 22, 20, whatever years old, right? You have a sense of thing like idea of what you want to do with your career in life, but also there are so many possibilities, and by talking to people who are doing different things, you can also be attracted to things that you might not even know, like might not even have heard of. Like for example, I am learning so much from Krish because he, I know, has more business acumen than me, and I know he learns from me because I can create content. So that way we're able to teach each other, and the same way applies to all of my other relationships. So lateral networking is super important. And I want to speak a little bit more about professional experience and how you can get more involved on campus and get that. And I want to talk about clubs. And I want to ask you guys, like, how important do you think are clubs on campus, especially professional clubs, like maybe consulting or banking clubs, to get that professional experience and get that experience on your resume? So if you guys have had any experience with that.
Yeah.
Wait,
I
Yeah, go ahead, Krish.
okay.
Okay. So clubs are interesting. The thing about clubs is, personally, I have a love-hate relationship with them, and I'll tell you why. I don't believe knowledge should be gate-kept to people who can sustain the pressure of an interview. Because yes, some people can't, even though they might be crazy smart. That said, you will always find your way through if you're truly, genuinely interested in what the club has to offer. Just form that personal connection with the person on the other side. It's not a corporate job, even though sometimes people may make it seem that way. The students on the other side who are deciding whether you get in or not, they're people too. They were scared once upon a time. And people might have differing views on this because the world of finance, especially the school I was in, is it can be really harsh and people are sometimes really cutthroat. So that said, I just say try and find those, but that goes, it's a lot that I'm trying to articulate here. But like Ansh said, be true to yourself and you'll find that one person on the other side who can resonate with you. The second you do that, focus on building the relationship with the person and everything else will take care of itself. So when it comes to clubs, find the club that you're truly interested in, not that has the brand or the pedigree or that thappa that everyone's searching for and saying, okay, I went to this club, even though it was a shit club and all I did was work for 4 months and I became unhealthy and I became sick because they really dragged us through the mud, but I came out on top. That's not something you want. You should want stuff that you genuinely believe is beneficial to you, not that the world is telling you is beneficial to you. Because if you stay true to yourself, you will automatically start to attract what is meant for you. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Interesting. I would
Yeah.
personally say that clubs have allowed me to get a lot of professional experience because I was interested in consulting. I wanted to become a consultant. Thank God I'm not a consultant today. But the way I got consulting experience was through these on-campus organizations because I was able to have like client interactions as well. So I think if you don't have any internships, like a summer internship or like an internship before you even start university, and you're just like, oh my God, what do I write in my resume? Like I have nothing to write. That's what helped me because I was in that position. And so clubs were my professional experience. And now that might not play to your advantage as much when you're applying to internships and jobs because if clubs are your main source of experience and you don't have a corporate internship experience, that might also hold you back. So I would still recommend you get internship experience, but to build up to that internship experience, I think clubs are extremely useful.
Yeah.
So
And
I would say, yeah, go
go
ahead,
ahead.
Mike. I was saying it's definitely important to be involved in clubs, but also don't get disheartened if you don't get into your desired clubs. Like, a lot of them are highly competitive. Let's take NYU, for instance. There are so many stern clubs that are so competitive with so many applicants and such less spots. And a lot of people don't get in and people get disheartened. But remember, you can learn almost anything online with the wealth of resources available, whether it's to, make your resume, learn for your interview, basically anything, just focus on your growth, uh, do independent projects through online courses. And when it comes to resumes and jobs and just learning how to present the best version of yourself, I personally really believe in networking, whether it's lateral networking or networking with people who are older than you in the industry. Because when you network with these people, people go with the intention that, oh, I need to get a referral out of this, oh, I need to get something out of this. But you don't always have to think about it that way. Just go in, share your experience, learn from their experience, see what they have to say. And, oftentimes it leads to some kind of a positive impact when you apply for a job. Because so many times it's happened when I've networked with a person and that person ended up interviewing me for the first time. But he didn't give me a direct referral, but I had a established connection beforehand. And so, it is important to network and it is important to not get discarded, even if you're giving your best, because there's always a workaround. There's always a workaround.
Honestly,
I
I
would
was going to say the same thing, that you
go ahead.
shouldn't be attached to the idea of being in that particular club. I think a lot of the time in university, I taught myself most of the things, even for classes.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to know that you need to do your work. No one is coming and doing it for you. And so that's why it's so important to be independent in knowing that, oh, this is what the club would have taught me. Maybe if I gain some more experience, maybe I can even apply again if ever I need to. Or even if you're in the club and you feel like you've taken from it everything that you needed to take from it, you can leave.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. You need to prioritize yourself and you need to understand that we have AI and we have the internet, and you can literally YouTube to learn something. And it's so important. Like I literally took up crocheting just because I was like, oh, maybe I should improve my dexterity and have something chill to do. And I
Yeah.
did that for a bit and then I left it. I'm like, it's fine. I did it for the season that I needed to do it for, you know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
know that it doesn't always need to be professional even. Just do what you want to do, like Krish said, not what people are telling you you need to do.
Yeah. And oftentimes I think a little unpopular opinion, but like, when you learn something in a class, I may not understand it as well just because maybe the professor's way of or the dialect is not as interesting to me. But when I watch the same concept on YouTube, something that was told to me for 1 hour, 15 minutes, I learned it better in 20. So, that is the power of just online learning. Chris just mentioned that Elon Musk learned how to build rockets. Isn't that insane? So, just so just go out there, and look up what you want to learn and you'll find an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bro, I learned deep learning like 1 week before my final and I passed. So, thing is possible. I also, on the topic of studying, let's talk a little bit about GPA and sacrificing your GPA for your extracurriculars and vice versa. I want to share my experience. So, for the first 3 years of college, I was somebody who was a 3.9 student. And I would still do extracurriculars on the side, but then once in my my senior year hit, and I started to get more like harder classes, and I started doing things for myself, my GPA dropped a little bit, and I ended up graduating with a 3.75. At this, but like looking back, I personally would not care so much about my GPA, because your GPA really does not matter that much. I'm not saying go fail your classes, like go only do extracurriculars, internships, still have like a 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, whatever, respectable GPA. But if you don't get an A and you get an A minus or a B plus or even a B, bro, it's okay. It's okay, because I feel like a lot of us, we come from like Indian backgrounds and CBSE students, and a lot of us are told that grades are everything, but grades are not everything, especially when you're applying to jobs and interviews. I was not asked about my GPA even once. I was only asked about what I learned from my experiences in my clubs or in my internships. And so getting those experiences is far, far more valuable than getting a 3.8 over a 3.7. Because really, there is not that much of a difference between two candidates when people are selecting for jobs and internships. Want to hear what you guys say about want to hear what you guys think about GPA and
Well,
extracurriculars.
considering that I'm in the medical field of things and that I want to apply to medical school, the GPA really does matter, because that's a whole section of it. So take all of this advice with a grain of salt, just because I understand that for certain fields it might not be as important. And also, even within like medical school, they are shifting from being primarily number focused to being personality and the way you learn focused. And so while it is a bit important to not fail your classes, it is also important to talk about, and that's exactly what Ansh said, right? What you learn from your experiences. When I first came into college, when I was doing my online classes, I will be very honest, my GPA was suffering. I was in a whole new environment. I remember that I was traveling and still doing classes, and I was so overwhelmed with all of the work that I needed to do and how different it was from high school. But I also know that as my academic load increased and life load and having to take care of myself when I came abroad, I had a on-campus job. I was also working part-time. I was also volunteering, all while my GPA was still going up. And that's because you're able to prioritize those different things. But give yourself the grace that if you do get a B, if you do get a B plus, it's okay, because what is important is that increase is that you learned from the mistakes that you made your freshman year. You're not repeating that in your second year. You learn and you come up to whatever level, and this is not even number related. You need to think about who you were the past year, what worked, what didn't work. Add what didn't work to your not to do list. You are only in competition with your past self, with yourself today, and who you want to be tomorrow. And you need to really think about, is it my GPA that I'm focusing on? Is it my internship that I'm focusing on right now? What's more important to me? And when you have those priorities set straight, when one of those is not working as well, you will be okay, because you know what you're prioritizing. So in that moment when I knew that I was working from home, I was like, or not working from home, sorry, when I was studying from India, and I was like, I need to give myself the grace that I'm working at 5 in the morning and I'm still spending time with my family during the day. And there was a lot of personal stuff going on. And I was like, you know what? I should give myself the grace to be okay with this. But yeah, your GPA does matter sometimes. And knowing when to prioritize that, knowing when to say no to certain things is very important.
Such great points. I think people who know me, I am a very strong believer of not stressing too much about GPA. I've always believed that GPA is just one part of the bigger picture. Well, of course, it's important for obvious reasons. I always chose to prioritize real life experiences and extracurriculars because I knew that would provide me the skills and opportunities that I really wanted. Just like Ansh in the starting, when I came in, I was just so adamant to have a high GPA because that's just how I was raised. That's how I was schooled. But eventually, just I realized how it does not matter at all. Like for example, even in terms of getting jobs, like I said, people hardly even look at the GPA, and it's all about your character, your personality, and what you can bring to the table. Uh, for my junior internship, I interned at Rathod, and I realized that when I went there, everyone else had a higher GPA than mine, but I still managed to be in the same position as them. And that was because I always believed in myself and the extracurricular activities that I did to get me there. And similarly, in my last 2 years, I actually stopped giving attention to my GPA at all, just because I became so consumed in what I was doing externally. And I think that if I would not have made that prioritization, I would not have been here or there. You know, I was able to, right now I am running my own business. And the reason that I was able to build that foundation was because I sacrificed a lot of time spending learning about courses. I would not go to classes in my last years. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that, but it's just what I did. I literally did not go to my classes in the last 1.5 years. And everything that used to be taught in school, I would just watch YouTube videos and learn and spend the rest of the time honing a skill that I don't currently have and trying to transfer that into something more actionable and something that's gonna make the rest of my life. So, I am a strong believer of not stressing about GPA, but it is still important to, get your hands in different complex tasks and see how you compare to others sometimes, just to kind of reassess and bring out the best version of yourself.
Absolutely. Krish, anything to add?
I think y'all are very wise. I'm just happy to be here. Honestly, I think the biggest learning for me lately has been, you know, the more authentic you feel, and the more I believe there are two selves. There's the you want to be, and there's the you are. When those two start to align, when you really start to do the things that are true to you, and you feel that alignment, shit just falls into place, and you suddenly are on a call with like 30 people watching, and with these amazing three people who are the same age as you, where you can learn so much from. And I say one big thing everyone should do is take a step, take a moment to look back every month. Just look back, see how far you've come. And as you keep looking back, you'll be like, oh my God, like this growth is actually there, because there's nothing sexier. There's nothing that motivates you more than momentum. The second you start to see yourself progressing, and you start to see the things around you changing and falling, and that ideal self and your current self align, stuff just starts to fly. That flow state you feel when you fall into something that you really enjoy doing, and you can just keep doing it forever and ever. That's the kind of that's how life becomes when these two align. So whatever you do it for you, no one else. Because if there's anything I learned through college, it's that there is no one way to do it. There is no path. You cannot say, oh, it worked for this guy, it'll work for me. It could, it very well could, but that's not how you should think about it. This is your life, this is your time. You should come out on the other side and be like, man, I have a story to tell. And, sometimes if you don't know what to do what would sound best for a story. That's that's the way I look at it. What can you look back 5 years from now and say, that was a good call, just because I can sit here and tell people about it, and it's cool. So if you're ever confused, on a lighter note, just do whatever you think would sound best to yourself. And yeah, I'm sure you'll find some awesome people, make some mistakes, and don't be afraid to fail. Go out there, put yourself out there, risk it all, and take that chance, because right now you can afford it. Later you may not be able to. So, jump off the cliff, try and fly, and more often than not, you'll find your way.
I think that's the best way to end our webinar and also our entire series. Uh, thank you. Thank you for everybody who's still watching. Thank you to Krish, Mahika, and Taran for joining us and agreeing to be speakers here. It's been an amazing 8 weeks. I have learned a lot. I have met a lot of people, and talking to you guys has been absolute pleasure and privilege. So I hope you guys also enjoyed and found value in this series. All of these videos are uploaded on YouTube, so you can watch them any single time and be always a text away, either on Instagram, email, wherever. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you guys in future webinars. I'm gonna stop recording.